Joe Biden could issue a statement and say, "I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution." I cannot simultaneously maintain my oath to the Constitution and also allow Kamala Harris to certify the election results.
Many of you sent me that video. You can view it in its entirety in the creators page, and it's an interesting thought, but I think it's legally flawed. Essentially, what this creator is theorizing is that Biden could issue some type of order that prevents the vice president from certifying the election based on the fact that the election has been compromised by some type of foreign influence, then suspend in that way the transfer of power until a new election can be held, then step down and make Vice President Harris the president of the United States. And all of this, according to this theory, is predicated upon the immunity ruling that the Supreme Court issued in 2024. And what this ruling says is that there are some presidential acts that are covered by an absolute immunity. That means that no matter how wrong those acts are, the president of the United States cannot be found criminal liable, cannot be tried for issuing those acts. So is it true that Biden could just nullify the election and hold a new election because he's protecting the Constitution and because the immunity ruling tells him that he's absolutely immune? Well, technically anything in law is possible, but in this case, this document says that that theory is highly legally unlikely. Here's why. Number one, when we talk about the immunity ruling, we need to separate the immunity from criminal prosecution of the person that performs the act from the validity of the act itself. In the immunity ruling, the Supreme Court simply said that the President of the United States is absolutely immune from criminal prosecution for certain official acts. It doesn't say that those official acts, if they violate the Constitution, can still deploy their effects. The order to nullify an election is not a power granted to the president by the Constitution, so that act could be easily considered a presidential overreach. The Supreme Court could consider that act unconstitutional, nullify it, and the election would still be valid. Second, the power of the vice president to certify the election is not unlimited and certainly doesn't include unilateral powers. The 12th Amendment is clear that this is a process conducted by a joint session of Congress. Nothing in this amendment or the Electoral Count Act of 1887 grants the vice president any unilateral powers that Congress cannot push back against. For this reason, in this case too, the Supreme Court would step in and declare the president's order invalid and the vice president's behavior also invalid. Third, if the president acts this way because he thinks that foreign influence impacted the results of the election, the forum to prove that is not the Oval Office, but it is legal and judicial avenues. In this context, the president of the United States has no unilateral powers under the Constitution, and any order in this direction would be again considered presidential overreach by the Supreme Court of the United States and therefore declared invalid. Then there's the issue of resignation and succession, and the rule there is clear. If the president steps down, then the vice president assumes the presidency. But if that happened in the context of the theory that we're discussing, then it could be easily argued that the president is stepping down to influence the results of the election. And again, the president doesn't have any power in this direction, so once again, the Supreme Court could step in and declare that decision invalid as a violation of the rules of peaceful transfer of powers. So while the theory that Biden could declare the election invalid, tell the vice president to not certify the election, hold no election, step down, and make the vice president president, and do all this under the protection of the immunity ruling, well, that is academically an interesting theory. In practice, it really, I don't think, holds any legal water.